Welcome to Daily Plunge. We are in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 8, verses 1 through 13. Now, the key verses are all at the beginning. Paul has decided to tackle the whole issue of meat that had been part of a sacrifice to a god, an idol. And the thing is that in the Roman world, all the meat stores were connected to a pagan temple. So it's kind of hard to avoid eating meat that had been sacrificed to an idol. But he says, there's some folks out there who are talking about how, they have knowledge that puffs up. It's either the knowledge that look how I am, I'm not eating that meat, or look, I know that God doesn't matter, so I am eating that meat. But both are about the arrogance of that knowledge rather than love. And, he says this, knowledge puffs up. Those who think they know something but don't know as they should know. And how is it they're supposed to know? Is that whoever loves God is known by God. And so to love God is to know God. And one of the things we need to recognize is that it is God who knows you first. That isn't something you came up with. You can't boast about it. You can't puff yourself up about it because God knows you. And then because God knows you, then you love others. And this is the framework or the foundation of the point that Paul's trying to make, is that it doesn't matter whether it's sacrificed or not to an idol. There's only one God, and that is the God who calls us. But what does he call us to? That this one God, Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live, and there's one Lord Jesus Christ, from whom all things come and for whom we live, that we live for God and we live for Jesus Christ. And so, which means that we're to live for one another. And so, part of the point that Paul is trying to make is, what's sacrificed to idols? It isn't just meat that we sacrifice to idols. Maybe it's our time. Maybe it's our marriage. Maybe it's our children that we sacrifice to the idols of a college education, to, worldly success instead of growing them in the faith. What are the things, the values of this world that we sacrifice to, right? So that's one thing to consider. I think the other is, if I don't feel it's a sin, it's not a sin. And that's tricky ground to be on. Paul's like, eating meat sacrificed to an idol might not be a big deal. It really isn't any of a kind of deal. But harming your brother and sister in the faith who's weaker than you is. And so we need to be careful about this passage because the context is very specific. It's not easily correlated with some other issue. I think the big takeaway is that God knows us, and only because God knows us do we know God, and it's only from that knowing God that we love him, right? And because we know and love God, we then live for God, which includes living for our brothers and sisters in the faith. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.